It's over. We are screwed.
You know, I'm willing to bet that currently within BioWare, I'm willing to bet that they are scrambling around left and right, trying to put together a large-scale presentation that will cover every aspect of this game. I'm willing to bet that that video is coming within the next few weeks or at least the next month. I believe this video is on its way. Reason being is that Veilguard, the next BioWare release in the Dragon Age franchise, has come out to such a fantastic misread, an absolute disaster. You know, they've had 2 trailers so far, both massively ratioed, although the second gameplay in quotes trailer, we're going to get back to that, was definitely much better than their original, what do they call it? The launch trailer, which was absolutely terrible.
But where are we gonna find her?
What the hell is even that?
And now I don't think they have that material ready, but we'll get back to that also. But man, that launch trailer, like what a misfire. Anyone with a lick of common sense and an understanding of the franchise could have told you that trailer would not be received well. So one really does wonder, how exactly did this happen? You know, sometimes I look at things like that and I'm like, did they lose a bet? Like, did they lose some kind of bet internally? And like this trailer ended up being chosen like with a coin toss and they just couldn't back out of it? Because the activities we've seen coming out of this studio, they lead me to believe that there must be a lot of internal conflict going on inside there. The way that the trailer was released reveals that someone, maybe not the, you know, it's like there's some kind of psychotic, insane person in charge of BioWare, or at least somewhere near the top, whose suggestions and inputs cannot be rejected. And so everything just has to go however they decide. That's the only way I see that childish, weird MCU style trailer, Fortnite style trailer was released, the first one.
We're going into the fade, aren't we?
Dragon Age is a dark fantasy franchise. No fan of Dragon Age wanted a silly looking trailer like that one. But for some reason, someone within BioWare chose to release this. Now it could be that the entire studio is insane, but usually I assume that there must be someone that was against it. Reason being, at the end of that trailer, there is the promise, you know, that the next trailer is coming out in 2 days. And the fact that that exists, you know, that's not normal. Most people don't release their trailers and then promise you another trailer at the end. What it tells me is that somebody knew that this trailer would not be well received. Their launch trailer with all the various characters looking silly and having all this weird art style. And so they decided to put a calling card at the end, letting the audience know that, hey, there is another trailer coming in 2 days. And before you write this thing off, please wait and see that trailer. That's essentially what that implies. Because if that trailer was going to be a massive and amazing, why like show off another trailer in the middle of this one? What would be the point? And to some extent it worked. I mean, the launch trailer was still torn to shreds and ratioed to death, but at least the game was not written off completely, since it was made clear that there was an upcoming trailer that would show more of what this game was actually about. And in the 2 days, you know, 11th June, it finally came out. And I went, wait a minute. This isn't a gameplay trailer at all.
Gotta help her. We don't have time to get arrested, especially
It's a glorified story trailer with a few moments of combat included. Now remember, gameplay in a title like this is not just combat. It's so many other things. Like, where is the homestead? Other classes, character creation, what's the style of travel? Is it just hub-based? Do we walk around wherever we want? Do we have vehicles, horses, different weapons, more than one ability? The menu, the inventory? So much stuff that I'd expect to see in a gameplay trailer is not in that trailer. Essentially what they showed boils down to a glorified cinematic with barely any actual gameplay to speak of. And what I find interesting is the variety of reactions I've seen with people, reacting to this. It's been all over the spectrum. Some people love it, some people hate it. Some seem to just be happy just to see BioWare release something else. I mean, these guys have had a decade of L's at this point. They're going 2 for 2 in terms of major release failures. This would be a 3 for 3 if it doesn't work out. I saw a streamer, someone that's a big fan of Mass Effect, and they were very happy to see that the game played more like Mass Effect. This person barely paid any attention to the dialogue. They didn't hear any of the lines at all. They were just happy whenever the combat came up because it looked like Mass Effect. Like, it had that Mass Effect pacing, where it's really fast, and they were happy about that. Whereas someone like me is on the total opposite side of the spectrum. I like both Dragon Age and Mass Effect, but my favorite franchise is Dragon Age, and I hate the idea and the notion that due to BioWare's need and constant push to casualize all their games, they seem to want to change Mass Effect and make it more, they seem to want to change Dragon Age and make it more like Mass Effect. That way they have 2 games that play like Mass Effect. One just happens to be set in Dragon Age stories, and the other one in Mass Effect stories. I don't want that. I want them to be completely separate franchises. So basically, every time when I was watching the trailer, I found some of the dialogue to be rather interesting, especially when it got to the part where Varric and Solas reunite and have a bit of a speech. That was really good.
Drowning the world in demons?
I have taken precautions to minimize the damage, Varric.
Minimize the... People are dying right now. You need to listen. Please.
People are always dying. It is what they do.
I'm not sold yet on any of the new characters. They seem to be sadly saddled with that truly terrible dialogue that's in this trailer, because there is some good stuff and there is some pretty bad stuff in the trailer.
This ritual's already drawing more power than I'd expect from a dozen mages. You told me he was working alone.
I also told you he was an ancient elven god.
An elven god. Well, whatever he is, he's causing trouble in my city. Let's go.
Now, I didn't like the fact that BioWare also kept the dialogue wheel. I mean, everyone's moved on from this thing at this point, which is ironic. BioWare essentially pioneered, or at least popularized, this mechanic with its Mass Effect games. Many other studios tried to copy this because BioWare was really popular at the time. And over time, it's been rejected and disliked in almost every setting that people have tried to put it in outside of Mass Effect. And yet, for some reason in 2024, when even Bethesda abandoned this, BioWare is back with a new dialogue wheel, which I suspect has mostly meaningless dialogue. It is complete with its mood icons to show which tone the character will take, and lines of text that are not truly representative of what the character will actually say once you choose them. Like, just why? I can assure you nobody wants this. Like, maybe some Mass Effect fans do, but nobody else wants this, especially not in Dragon Age. You'd think that the popularity of The Witcher 3, Baldur's Gate, and the return of classical RPGs would veer BioWare away from this type of thing and make them want to revisit their history as RPG developers, but that's clearly not the case. They seem to be determined to double and triple down on this journey to casualize all their games, I mean, hell, early rumors actually had this thing pegged as a live service multiplayer game. So I'm hoping they did a much better job than Gotham Knights at cleaning that stench out of the final version of the game. I hope there isn't a lot of mechanics remaining from the version of when this was meant to be like multiplayer live service. I hope they completely rebooted it and built a pure single player game right from the ground up. And speaking of which, this is actually my main point of worry. After the second trailer was shown and also did not go very well, even though it was much better than the first, BioWare lifted their NDA for influencers and media companies that had been allowed in-house to interview and get a look at what the studio was working on. Now, since then, so much information has come out, especially from an exhaustive article from Game Informer, that if you basically read that or watch a video about it, you essentially know everything about this game except maybe the story itself. So that information was available already. They simply chose not to reveal it in their initial presentation. Remember, at this point, nobody forced, this is why I made the joke earlier about whether they lost a bet. I was like, nobody forced BioWare to reveal this game like this. They chose to use these trailers, especially that first one. At that point, all the power was in their hands. They had full control. None of us knew anything about this game. They could have revealed whatever they wanted. And yet for some reason they chose to run with this and put themselves at a heavy disadvantage. For some reason they assumed that those two trailers would win over the masses. Like, I can't imagine being so out of touch with what your audience want, or working in such a secure echo chamber of peers that you release something so completely tone deaf that you then have to immediately course correct and do what you should have done in the first place. Once the original trailer released, the gameplay trailer, I was actually speaking with my cousin and we were talking about how I wish they had revealed more information, right? And their original idea was maybe they're planning to reveal this information over time. But yeah, as soon as the backlash hit, they revealed all the information anyway. If you read any of these articles, you know everything now. You know all the subclasses, you know the homestead, you know everything about the romances, you know everything about how the character creator works, different sliders that are involved. Essentially, we know everything about how the mechanics of the game work, from crafting to blood magic to everything. They could have just started with that. Like, they could have just come forward and did that. Bethesda did this last year and Starfield was pretty successful. They came out with a huge 40-minute trailer that showed almost every mechanic that the game had. It didn't look like, it didn't look super polished or anything, but it was everything and it was honest. That is the advantage I think Bethesda had with Starfield over what Veilguard had. The Veilguard has been completely mishandled. First of all, they haven't shown much, and what they've shown is not particularly impressive. Not in 2024, not in a world where Baldur's Gate 3 exists. Not in that world. Maybe in 2024 when they were releasing Inquisition and Mass Effect 3, this kind of thing could have flown, but this is 10 years later and the stakes have completely changed. Nothing they're showing now is very impressive. Especially, actually that's the biggest problem. It looks very average. And then, the thing that worries me further is the people that made this damn move or series of moves. These are the same people that probably doomed Andromeda and the same people that ran Anthem. And unfortunately, even though they are course correcting and showing us, and telling us a lot about the game, these are the same people that are running Veilguard. Like, realistically, what chance does this game have? These people seem to only be capable of taking L's and yet just keep being handed more money to do more work. Outside of the fact that the game carries the Dragon Age title, I really do not have much hope for this thing. You have to remember that at this point, BioWare have not had a hit in 10 years. That's how long ago Inquisition was. And don't forget that it came out in a year with little competition from other AAA games, as it was one of those years that was really bad for big studios. But now Veilguard is coming out in a landscape filled with many amazing RPGs. The kings of the RPG space have long been dethroned, and now we have Larian Studios, FromSoft, CDPR, Obsidian, Capcom, many other studios whose games far exceed the level that BioWare used to put out. In this reality, Veilguard seems almost completely outdated before it even comes out. And it would have made more sense bringing it out during the days when Square Enix, Bethesda and BioWare were the ones ruling the RPG space. The best scenario I see for Veilguard is that it turns out to be a solid adventure game, like a Hogwarts Legacy type deal, whereby it functions well, it has a lot of love and detail in the world, and it gives the fans what they want. Now, of course, since the ship seems to have already sailed on that last point, I guess let's just hope that the fans, that what they get is good enough to replace what they would have preferred. I look forward to following the news and updates on Veilguard as it gets closer, and hopefully to being proven wrong. The biggest check, if not checkmate, to all of this information they've revealed is that we haven't seen any of this shit. Like, this is all just people talking, people who are influencers and have a heavy stake in helping BioWare promote this game. The only material we've seen is what's in those trailers. Everything else is just a bunch of screenshots. We're yet to see all this talk about this character creator, the sliders, and everything else in action in the actual game engine in Frostbite. And that is why I strongly believe they do not actually have this material ready. And I believe that they must be scrambling internally right now to get this thing ready so that they can present it to the masses. Due to their own mismanagement of this presentation, they have essentially put themselves on the back foot. For no reason. They had all the advantages in the world and they just chose to completely misfire. And now they must win back the audience and try and sell this thing to an audience that's already completely rejected, many of whom have written it off. Oh well, who knows? Maybe at the end of the day, Veilguard will turn out to be the next Elden Ring and we'll all be eating well, if that's the case. If it follows suit with its older sibling Anthem, at least we'll get some good videos out of it. I think it's a win-win for us regardless.